Oh, that's very bizarre. Hi, guys.
Good morning.
I had disk space, so I had to restart Zoom, and suddenly here you are. Let me make sure it's recording correctly. Yeah, that should be good. How is everyone?
Having brunch?
What's that, Peter?
Having brunch. So if you hear chewing sounds,
Mute you. Yes. That would be the safe thing to do. So have you guys had a chance to look at the PDF from last meeting?
not yet.
We need to decide on a few things, how to handle the data from these things. Just found an error. Have you had a chance to have a look, Fabian?
No.
You do have the PDF though, right, guys?
I received an email that you sent it, I believe, but
Yeah, because I've tried to, I'm using OpenAI to do summaries and anything that looks like a lightning talk.
Well, I just killed a couple hours, banging my head against a wall, trying to use a create watcher function in Neutralino that it turns out wasn't actually implemented. Documented, the document says it's part of the release, but it's not actually there.
you can't trust the documentation.
Sad but true.
Yeah, that's annoying.
I was thinking the problem was, what am I doing wrong with my code? This looks exactly like the documentation says it's supposed to look. Of course, naturally, it wasn't actually implemented in the actual release.
Yeah, not brilliant. Have you guys got the PDF up?
Digging it up now.
I think a good example is to go to page 15.
Right, page.
Yeah, page 15.
Hang on, I must be looking at the wrong file. I'm topping out at page 14.
I think there is 70 pages.
Okay, that's definitely not the right version of the file. There's one. Okay, let me try this one. Yeah, 70-page file. Okay, I must be on the right one now. Okay, I'm on page 15.
Right, so the italic bit is AI summary. So yeah, I'm just wondering how you think we should proceed with this.
That's weird. I don't see anything in italic on mine.
Me neither. I see the raw text, but I don't see a summary.
Okay, hang on.
It's version 2, 70 pages. And page 15 is like the middle of the transcript.
Okay, I just sent it again.
Okay, going for my inbox. Nothing's landing yet.
Yeah, the connection here is a bit slow today, partly because uploading a big file. Let me see. Yeah, I can give you the. Hang on, that's.
Maybe just share your screen, Frode. And we can see
Yeah,
what you're looking at.
I
That'd
can
be
do
easier.
that. Can do that too. There's a Dropbox link to a previous version.
I received the document.
You did?
Yeah, and I see some italic on page 15.
So have you got it too, Peter?
I'm looking at the Dropbox version now.
Yeah, I should be able to download it. It's weird that it only went to Fabian so far. So yeah, Fabian, what do you think?
It's coherent. For sure, it's interesting to explore. I don't know how many people are going to read through or read just the summary.
No, exactly. It's one of those issues of, we don't exactly have a big audience, but how much should we work on this? Because, this is definitely, I'm saying the problem, not the solution. This is definitely part of the future of text, how we can present things.
Then I would start maybe in the table of content, like say 0.0 or 0.2.0, to clarify a bit that that's the italic text. Where does it come from? But it's a suggestion that is welcoming. How do you say, suggestions for improvement or criticism, or I don't know what, but it's just not fixed or set in stone, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, at the beginning of the transcript, there's a text saying part of it. I'll put a note about it, suggestions.
But I mean, I think it could be worthwhile to put it a bit more in light if, arguably, that would be especially for us who did participate to the event itself, the feedback on that specific part that is new would be, egoistically speaking, the most interesting. So it would be nice to have people eventually engaging with it. And I think if it's just like a footnote somewhere, people might not react.
Can you elaborate? I don't think I fully understand.
Here, on 2.2, you said this is how it is. Like italic text or OpenAI generated summaries. So like people have to accept it. Whereas now for us who did participate to the event, for you who is trying this new tool, I would argue that how this tool could be useful and eventually improved thanks to the feedback of others is as important as the content of what happened during the event.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll write something like that. But also, whenever we have a big symposium or a mini symposium, there's always someone who talks about the importance of free discussion before the symposium and then afterwards and all of that. But when I sent this out to the community, both the editable file and this one, asking if anybody had any comments on the presentation or on the on their own text, because I really don't have a mental capacity to go in and make sure I remove all the ums and ahs and grammars and all that stuff. The only person who commented so far was Vint, and I'm not going to hire him to proofread this thing, but there does seem to be incredibly little engagement with the content we generate.
Yeah.
And that's neither here nor there in the scheme of things, but I'm wondering how we should treat that going forward with to what degree to have a record.
But if it's just a record, then I think it's okay if there is no interaction with it.
Yeah.
Did either of you ever read the Cybernetics Group?
No.
Doesn't ring a bell.
There's an MIT Press book documenting the Macy conferences, and it was basically a documentation of a group that was doing stuff like we're doing in that time period. So I thought you might like to take a look at that if you get your hands on a copy. Might be of interest.
So it's a book.
Yeah, it's a book documenting a series of conferences and talking about the conference interaction. So it's sort of analogous to what we're struggling with.
MIT Press.
And I have whole bookshelves dedicated to that imprint.
Yeah. Right. Any other comments about last week?
I need to take what I said a bit more seriously, in the sense that I did the presentation because somebody kindly provoked me into doing it, which I think was interesting endeavor. And it did force me to step back a little bit and think about it, let's say, not just critically, but in terms of how to use these kind of tools more efficiently, better, compose a bit better with it. And I think without like taking the big picture so that it doesn't get too technical, because actually the technical part, okay, it might be interesting, but it changes fast, so it's not necessarily that important. So I was basically just for a bit for context, saying that all those tools like the large language model enable us to manipulate language overall more easily, and instead of being very low level, like character after character, word after word, as we've done for the last, well, forever, I guess. Now it's entire sentences or books or whatnot. So the level of manipulation is higher. Not necessarily perfect anyway, but still it became possible and thus enabling new usages. So I'm just trying to say, if what I said does indeed make sense, then the next question is, now, so what? How can seeing through a higher level of abstraction and being able to manipulate corpus of text, how to put this to use, basically? And this I haven't spent much time actually doing. The tiny thing I did though is right after I think right after the event, I used some text to speech. No, speech to text to add captions to a video that I've done in the past and to a brand new video I recorded after, with an acceptable result, let's say. But then again, like, what does this enable? Does it allow me to eventually skim through the video I've made and then rethink about it, or either make a summary and then redo a new video with this in mind? All this, again, I'm like still in the middle of it. But yeah, I'll have to. So I'm again grateful for the opportunity to present last week. Now I'll have to think of a follow-up, let's say, presentation, even if it doesn't take place. But let's imagine to prove, let's say, what are the consequences of putting this kind of idea, high level of abstraction, to manipulate text and other things like code or whatever. Yeah, what does it actually result in?
Yeah, I mean, that's good to hear that, you know, this is a provocation for you to go further.
Indeed. So I was uncomfortable giving the presentation because it's very early stage. I'm uncomfortable now because I haven't fully embraced what I said to putting it. But if I don't from time to time get uncomfortable, then it means I'm not trying something genuinely novel or challenging. So yeah, that was a good kind of discomfort, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, one of the problems I have with our situation is, of course, we're supposed to be about the future of text in general, yet there's hardly any textual interaction in the community. You know, no comments based on this. There was a few people, Barbara, Matthias, and Livia. They sent 3 articles ahead of the symposium. But it seems nobody reads and nobody writes. And to an extent, that is okay. But, you know, if we only have this record of hours and hours of us chatting, or maybe 10% is of interest in the future if something happens, maybe not the most useful thing. So I don't know. I'm a bit frustrated.
Well, I've been banging my head against the wall on the prototyping angle, just getting defeated by framework after framework with inaccurate documentation. It always seems to be promising up to a point and then it just sort of falls flat when I try to use something it says I can do that isn't there.
Yeah, and I understand that frustration.
Because first I was using Electron, but then the Electron results were so heavily bloated that I tried to use Tauri. And then I hit the wall on Tauri. Then I moved to Neutralino. Then I discovered that Neutralino didn't really implement the interfaces that it said it implemented. Just like, where do you turn next? Ah!
Yeah. Yeah, no, exactly. Do we have any things specific to talk about today, or should we adjourn till next week and organize another big one? I'm not sure what makes sense right now.
Yeah, I really don't have anything working to show you guys now. I was hoping to have a better level demo until I discovered that, again, the file watcher API isn't really there, which was what the next demo is going to be depending upon using. Maybe I'll find a workaround by next week. They do have one thing in Neutralino that might still save us, and it lets you add your own extension. So even though they didn't implement the file watcher, I can write a file watcher in Node.js and theoretically glue it to the Neutralino front end and get it working that way. So that may be doable. I haven't tried it yet. If it works, I'll be able to stay with Neutralino. If it doesn't work, I'll have to completely chuck Neutralino and find something else.
Yeah. Yeah, I that's something that's quite outside of my area of expertise, you know, the programming side of things. I am waiting for an update from the author and Liquid guys, so I do understand the frustration though. So yeah, but and you, Fabian, you're okay.
Well, I have cool stuff to show, but if it's just the 3 of us, I'm also waiting for more cool stuff to show for next time. Maybe it's no problem.
I'd be happy for you to share now. I'd very much like to pay attention, and it may be a very casual thing then for you to present later. By the way, I saw the one of the reports on the Apple headsets, and it's talking a lot about Apple being focused on sports and that kind of stuff, which is great. You know, it may very well get them to market, but it doesn't really push the needle along what we're talking about, does it? So I think we need to, you know, the AI seems to have plateaued, which is good. However, use for finding out how to use it is obviously going to go on for more years. And of course, there will be innovations for sure, but we shouldn't forget the VR aspect, is what I'm saying. But yeah, happy to see what you have to show, Fabian.
Sure. So I can do it now or another time. Huh? There is no.
Yeah, now it's good.
Okay. The first thing is the little gadget I just received. I don't know if you can see well from my webcam, but it's a monocle
Okay.
that you snap on your glasses, and it has a little camera that you might be able to see there, little LED lights, and but most importantly, which I think will be too small for you to see, it has a little screen in there, so you can display some text in it.
I think that's really
Whatever.
cool and also very interesting, because a lot of us do wear glasses, so it makes sense to have something in those glasses rather than put on something else. At least sunglasses should have that kind of capability, I think.
Yeah, I don't have glasses, unfortunately. I 3D printed one couple of months or years ago, but they are too thick. Actually, I'll have to carve through a bit. But yeah, I think that's indeed I don't know the percentage actually of people, but I would say for knowledge worker, office workers, I think more people than not do have glasses. So of course, if the first reaction when you take a headset in is like, oh, can I use it with my glasses? And no, I don't see, etc. Especially with text, yeah, that's a showstopper right away. So yeah, that's an interesting alternative. And I think also one funny thing is like a monocle is kind of a historical provocation. Like nobody wears monocles. So instead of having like some futuristic looking high-tech thing that projects you into the future, and then when you try it, it's actually kind of dorky and not so nice. This is like, okay, let's go nuts, let's go crazy, and we'll see what works. So I think maybe it's a bit more, how do you say? Let's not take ourselves too seriously, and thus let's try legitimately new things instead. So could be interesting.
Well, for me, the killer app is going to be a AR system with face recognition that can just pop people's names over their heads. When I see people at a conference, I know I've met them before lots of times, and I can't remember their name to save my life. So instead, I have to fumble around and wait for someone else to use their name so that I can pretend that I have recognized and remembered their name all along when I really didn't. So if we just get that little bubble with the person's name and affiliation popped over their head automatically, that'll be the killer app.
Why is that so important?
A lot of people feel really wounded if you don't remember their name when they know that they remember meeting you sometime back. And some people have really good memories for names and faces. And unfortunately, one of my handicaps is I have so much academic material crammed in my memory up there that I kind of flush the area of the brain that you develop for face name association and repurpose it.
But if you meet someone at a conference, at what point do you feel the need to say their name rather than, oh, hey, it's really nice to see you? I know it's kind of like a conference-y type of thing. People like to say, hey, it's really nice to see you again, Fabian. How are you doing, Fabian? Like some people do the whole repetition, and that's fine. But if you don't do that, do you really feel that people are like, hang on, you haven't said my name. Do you know who I am?
And maybe it's more of a legal culture thing than generic academic culture, because certainly at bar meetings, the name thing and knowing the person's firm affiliation is like really critical for bonding.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually.
But then something that might be interesting, you're not the first person who suggested that, Peter. I have a friend who has a condition I forgot, but like
face blindness.
Yeah, something like this. Basically, he just cannot recognize people. It's not that he cannot remember. It's like he just cannot recognize, and that could be after a very short time. And that's why he started also to work on augmented reality for this kind of purpose. But yeah, my point being, for other cases than this, what might be interesting is a kind of embedding the process that is successful for most people. Like, oh, you associate the name with something, some factoid about the person, maybe something that you can relate to, a deeper link or relationship with that person, so that after a couple of events, it becomes something natural, maybe with little exercises for it, and then you can remove it. Maybe that would be also a different way than, let's say, just a clutch, but something to kickstart or support the process.
And it can be embarrassing because at one conference, someone came up to me and started trying to pick up a conversation that we'd been having like 4 years before in the middle of the conversation. And it took the longest time until I was able to key in on what the context was. It's very, very embarrassing at first.
Well, one of the first girls I knew in my life in Norway came back many years later, met her at a bar, talked to her and her friends, and only after she left did I recognize her. So yeah, I know the pain. That was teenage years, but still, yeah. It's raining outside. I think I'm going to drive to pick up Emily and Edgar, if you don't mind. It's
Okay, then we'll adjourn till next week.
Yeah, let's do that. But why don't you guys think about where we should go from here? It seems that, these meetings are very hit and miss. Last Monday was really, really useful. Today is not. And that's no disrespect to you guys. I'm very grateful you're here, but you do agree with me. And that's okay that these Mondays are hit and miss, but our special sessions seems to be pretty good. So maybe we should plan a follow-up AI in academia and text quite soon. I don't know. What do you think? Oh, that was a lot of thought. What I say, what do you think?
It took a bit of time to say something meaningful, because I do like also the not too structured version, because then we can show whatever is going on or just share what's on our minds. If it's too structured, it's also more people, and then I think what was not good in the last discussion about AI is that I think there were a lot more people with a lot more things to share who couldn't do it. So that was trickier, which, okay, here we have maybe too much time for the three of us, but at least we don't feel like we have to cut someone in the middle of the sentence just to say something. So
talking of which,
yes, a classic. No, but it's we can try to adjust. Like, if we have too many meetings like this, where it's just a few of us, then there is something going on, something to adjust.
Yeah, Peter.
Yeah, I wonder, do we know anyone in the linguistics or computational linguistics who might be able to come in and give a little bit of insight from their perspective?
Yeah.
But I know right now, everything is locked into the generative AI based on neural systems, but there's a lot of other work out there based on actual symbolically oriented parsing and other research that I think is being badly ignored, that we're going to have to come back to if we want to be able to get to results where you can interrogate the system on how it arrived at the answer that it gave you.
Okay, let me think, if you don't mind.
We could invite somebody with that kind of a background. I think it'd be really, really useful.
Yeah, I can maybe ask Bruce Horn if he might be available. But then again, he's doing secret stuff at Apple, so he's a bit concerned about how much to let's be told. Fabian, what you said is interesting and provocative. Can we adjourn till 1:15? Can we meet back here then? I will think about only that. Is that okay?
I'm not sure I understand. You want to do a break now?
Yeah, I'm going to go pick up Emily and Edgar because it's really horrible rain and wind outside. But what you said about small and big meetings, I really want to think about that and continue the discussion. Are you okay coming back in 15:15?
But I'd rather that we do it another moment during the week then, and then we can think about just this, even or invite others to answer this.
Yeah, we can also do that.
Yeah, that might be better.
It's just that we have spent a lot of time over the years talking about the structure of the meetings. You know, before this series of work, there was very much the whole tool system versus the human system, Doug Engelbart, and we tried to split it and it never worked. But I'm not saying we should abandon the Monday meetings. But you know, maybe also the longer meetings, the bigger meetings should be a bit longer. Maybe the 3-hour meetings with a 15-minute break in the middle. And also, if people do give something ahead of time that we can share, it's much easier when they make a presentation saying, you know, as you have seen, I will now elaborate. But that just doesn't happen, which is what's a bit frustrating.
I don't. But there is no rush to discuss about this, so go pick them while it's cold and rainy, and then we find another moment to discuss about the.
Yeah, no, it's not a super rush for that either. But so let me ask you both: what do you think the point of these meetings are? Is it entirely about getting something on the record, or is it entirely about the live discussion? Or is it a combination, or is it something else?
To me, it's the combination, because a little bit like the giving the presentation last week was in itself interesting. Having it on the record or as a record, make it as a like stepping stone to dive deeper and a kind of forcing me into doing better. So it's definitely both, and same for the informal meeting. Like, to be honest, 99% of the time I will not use some of the content that we've made, but to know that it exists, it's the same with my wiki, with all the notes I took for 15 years or so. 99.99% of the time and of the content I don't use, but just knowing that it's there, the few times I have the ability to send a link to someone with some of it, it expands the, I hope, quality, but at least the breadth of the things I can try so much more. But to me, it's definitely both. And then in terms of the outcome of the meeting, it's, I said it before, but it's a brand new idea. That's what I'm here for, and transforming those ideas to a process, a tool, a way to think, change things. And I keep on coming because of that, and because it's hit and miss. But yeah, that's also what I do in my daily job. It's like a lot of the time it just doesn't pan out, but the few time it does and it's genuinely new, then it makes the rest worthwhile. So,
well, for me, there are two things. One, all the research pointers that people drop in the chats, even like during the real long meeting, that side chat conversation with people dropping links to resources was absolute gold. And the other thing I like is being able to show the little demos that I'm working on and see the demos that Fabian's working on. And that gives me a lot of ideas that trigger thoughts for what else I could do on the development side. For instance, right now, I've been thinking a lot about building grammars so that we can start moving towards more of a symbolic AI as opposed to the hit and miss neural approach. So I've been using the PEGI.js system for all my grammar development. But then I start thinking, well, what about Frode's perspective or a non-programmer's perspective? How can we make that technology available to them? So then I started thinking, well, maybe we can have some sort of a GUI editor for the grammars. So what components would that have? One, a nice little dialog box for each kind of grammatical rule. So for instance, I built a little dialog widget for string literal rules. So all that you do is you type in the string in an open text field, and then the widget would generate the PEGI parsing expression grammar representation of that string in the form of a matchable rule. Then I started thinking, okay, well, I can start building these little widgets to represent each rule, but then how do you deal with moving rules between grammars so that you can reuse them effectively? And this has been a weak point in all of the grammar generator systems I've seen. Some of them let you have a module representing a subgrammar that can be used elsewhere. But to make that usable for an end user, you'd want something like the old Mac font DA mover, where you could have grammar productions in one list representing the original source grammar, and then have another list on the other side of the screen representing the target grammar that you're moving things into, and then have little arrows so that you can move the productions back and forth. But because the productions depend upon one another, you have to have a directed acyclic graph representation of how the individual rules are related, so that if I transfer a rule from one grammar to another, all of the dependencies will get transferred along with it. Otherwise, I'd wind up with broken grammars. So this way, Frode wouldn't need to think about what sub-rules are being implicated by the grammar. He could just be looking at a real top-level grammar, a postal address, a county code, or whatever real high-level concept, and move that to assemble a grammar without necessarily understanding the mapping between that and the low-level grammar specification for the parser generator. So that's sort of where my little experimentation line's been going. And it looked like Neutralino was going to work, but I really need to have that file watcher in the background so I can start exporting the grammar files, use the command line tools to build the grammars and build the parsers from the grammars, automatically be looking at the sample text files, apply the parser to the text files, get the output, and then bring that back into the user interface so that an average user like Frode could be looking at, here's the result, and just be thinking in terms of the real high-level abstractions, as opposed to getting into all the mess with how you're going to orchestrate the underlying software components. So that's sort of what my current research has been running along.
Yeah, cool. I'm going to share my screen with you now. So I'm just doing a tiny little experiment just to see how it jives with you guys. So what I've done is made each person's name a heading.
That's good.
And let's just export that now. We're going to do heading numbers, no, justify, no. Oh, that's fine. So just arrow up. Okay, here we go. So here's my name. I made it a bold heading, very small, and then we go further, Alan Laidlaw, right? So now, and this is the key, and I think this is important, but I just want to know if there's any traction for it. If I now copy this, because I'm going to write a new piece, because I disagree with him so much, and paste it, you see this?
Oh, very good. I like that.
Right? We have that already with the future of text. And we can even do this, where I copy a quote here, and then, excuse me, I do Command C copy, right? And then I paste it as a citation. It doesn't show the quote. So now I'm just going to export and show you why I think this is useful. So this is obviously the wrong template, but so we have. So this is why I'm waiting for Jacob to do this. It sticks. No cover, no table of contents. Right. That's useful, right?
Yes, definitely.
So for the Mac people amongst us, we should start doing something like this, whether it's an author, which is great for me, obviously, but even in virtual environments, we should look at how we can do citations. Right now, nothing's happening. And if I spend hours and hours on making all the headings here, you see, if I command click on this heading, I can set who the contributing author is for that section. That's how I do it. It's very simple. And then it's in the Visual Meta, right? Oops, sorry.
I wonder if we could go back and pull together all of the citations that we've dropped into our chats over the years and get them into one author document with where they came from, when they originated.
Yeah, but if we don't actually cite each other, what's the point, right? What is missing here? This is weird. References. Where are the headings? Eh? Is it outside of this? Oh no, there aren't any headings. Sorry. The headings we will find here. This one has headings.
Maybe when we,
You see here?
yeah, maybe when we do a quote, what we'd want to have is that whole path up to the top level of the context that the quote was pulled out from. You know, so we're in topic, subtopic, subtopic, and then we have a quotation and we copy that quotation. In addition to that, we got the metadata on what the topic, subtopic, and subtopic were.
Okay, but why? By the way, did you see what happened there? So here's the document. I know you know this bit, but just have a look. So we have Alan's long quote here, totally readable. Click on the name of the document, and it opens to that page. So we have that level of addressability now, right? It's really, really frustrating to be at a point where investing so much time and effort on this and then trying to get it to a wider audience where we don't even use it. And Fabian, you're very lucky here because you're a Linux guy, so you can't really use it. You can make a new system for it, but why do you think, why is there just no take on this? Wouldn't it be very interesting to have our journal over the year have the live presentations that are recorded, but as you said, Fabian, to see the progress, you can read something in the book, and if someone has cited something that's in the same book, because it was installments now made into one book, click on it, and you see what the original was. It feels a lot like we are reinventing things because we don't do this. Rant mostly over.
Well, maybe you should go pick up Emily and Edgar. I'm worried about them out in the storm.
No, well, Emily texted that there's no need, but it isn't very pleasant out there. Hang on. I don't know if we can see, move this massive monitor that I'm so proud of. Can you see? That's not very dramatic on there, is it? It's funny.
No, just look gloomy.
It's bad enough out here. But also, Fabian, we need to have this discussion with what's the point of a demo day? Because I do think we should have it, no question. But, you know, is it a bunch of people showing to each other? And if so, maybe we should do it more often, or maybe it should be with this. If Andrea, who's very busy, is involved, what would be the kind of higher level aim when we, you know, need to have some decisions on this? Also, since it's just the two of you, before I run now, I'm going to ask your opinion on. I have tried to clean up a little bit on this website, and you know it's a bit difficult going between using I and we in this, because you know I went through a process quite a while ago wondering how involved people wanted to be. And there was quite a lot of, oh, Circle died, so why would I want to post? And that's absolutely fair enough. But also, I'm very happy to involve. So what I've done is a bit of us, a bit of me, and then when we have the about, there's some more information and it links to the lab. If you feel that you want to be more here, that would be absolutely great by me. I just felt that there's been a few times where people feel that they've been kind of listed as something they don't really feel they are. So this is not about my ego, this is about clarity. And when it comes to ego, obviously we look better when we're bigger, right? So here we have the community and we have the team. So everybody who has got these little things are on here. Fabienne, why are you not on here? Can you send me something and I'll post it, or do you want to post it? It's just meant to be a super short summary.
Yeah, I'll try to post.
Okay, yeah, that would be good. And one more thing. Okay, for you guys also then specifically, you're both mentioning specific projects or things you have done or are working on. In our community, because obviously this is owned under your own identities, but in our community, how would you want it mentioned? Do you want like a specific link from the lab or future text thing or nothing, or what do you want? Because for me, it's important that however people get into what we're doing, that the things are connected and they can easily understand what's going on.
Oh, maybe we should try to like have everybody make up like a little personal research statement that we could just have as a separate page.
Yeah.
To me, that's if we do this way with a research statement or in this or that page is better. Yeah, as long as it's somewhere, and eventually again we adjust if need be. That's fine by me. So I'm pretty chill with all this initially.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Research statements, because on our Future Text Lab website now, which really should be all of us, depending on how much you want to be part of it. Bit of an intro, symposium books, guest speaker series, clean. Then it's a bit of hyperbole, as Mark Anderson might call it. Research questions as written now. If you have an issue with them, do tell me, in addition to writing your own. And then under implementations, I just have my stuff because that is all I feel I can list. But if you want to have your projects listed here, I think that would be very good.
Yeah, I like the sound of that.
Okay, so just send me what you want in the little blurb and what you want on a page. Or actually, Peter, I think you have an account. You can do it yourself if you like to.
Okay,
What do you
I'll try to
think,
draft
Fabian?
something. I'll try to draft something over the week.
Okay.
Oh,
So, Fabian, what do you think of, how do you want to be on this?
Doesn't matter to me too much, somehow.
In principle, would you like to have your projects listed on here?
Well, it's a bit tricky. Yes, the thing is how to represent them, maintain them. All that is, yeah, I'm not sure. I think I'm okay with the, let's say, videos. That again, that makes a trace. So
Can you give me, can you point to a block of text you would want for your bio?
yes. I'll put my Twitter thingy.
What's happening? Is there a breakdown of communication in the European Parliament? So, is this what you mean?
Yeah, that works.
Okay, and then I will link to both this thing. It's annoying when it does that. Oh, okay, fine. Let's keep it as a block if you're okay with that. And then I put a link to this, your website. Oh, now it wants to convert to link. Here we go. Oh, of course, it had to make it a weird Twitter link. That looks better. So how is this?
Very nice, thank you.
Cool, thank you. Peter, you are on Twitter, right?
Yeah.
Do you want to have your, to do the same thing?
Let's see, it's let me go open my little Twitter page and I'll tell you what the Twitter handle is.
Oh, I got it. That wasn't easy.
do?
That was
Okay.
not, yeah.
Yeah, link that in there too. That's good.
Good. Okay, I think we made a little progress. We have, when someone clicks on the lab, actually, you know what? Why is my name there? Especially for this, it doesn't need that. Do any of you know the Japanese animated robot thing, Gundam?
I heard of it, but I don't think I've seen.
You know, we went with Edgar to the big Gundam, here it is, the real massive thing. But it's not really part of the pop culture here, is it? So, do you know about it, Peter?
Well, I've never watched that particular anime, but I'm familiar with the giant mech robots.
Cool.
And then we had a couple American sci-fi movies, Pacific Rim, and there was a sequel to it.
So Edgar's turning 6 in 2 weeks, and yesterday he had his first Star Trek. The Next Generation.
I remember when I was watching the original series and original episodes.
Yeah. They are much worse than we remember, by the way. The sets and a lot of this, right. Oh my God, it's hokey. It's so bad. But I was also a massive fan. It's very strange. But okay, I'm grateful for this. I think we made a little progress, moved the needle forward a little bit. Just want to show you on this page here are the future of text publishing. So we have symposium, books, journal. I no longer call it quarterly journal because it's so random. So we have the video recordings of everything. We have a draft PDF, the one that we've just been discussing of the last session. But the transcripts are not done. I have someone doing it, and he's been not available, but it is happening. So it will come in properly human done, not like the one we currently have. But last year we do have a few, so it's not so bad. Right, okay. Anything else for today then?
No, nothing.
I went rollerblading yesterday.
Okay.
And I don't really remember what triggered the thought, but yeah, I think I was discussing with a friend a couple of days before about sickness in virtual reality and how a lot of it comes from the lack of motion. Let's say if you move your body, it works well, but if it looks like you're on a plane and you don't feel the acceleration, then it doesn't feel good. And I was insisting on the acceleration aspect, because if you're on the train at like the Shinkansen at 400 kilometers per hour, but you have been at 400 kilometers per hour for the last minute, you don't feel it. You're just there. So I think we human get to somehow feel very much the acceleration, the difference in speed. And because I was on my rollerblade, I felt the acceleration, not at 400 kilometers per hour, but as a beginner, even going a little bit faster felt good, a bit riskier, but good. And I somehow made the link between this in the rollerblade and in VR with something very much abstract, which is the learning process. And I think basically, I was thinking about teaching VR to kids. And then basically, if they don't feel any acceleration in their knowledge, if they don't feel that they were learning something, then it's very boring to them. And then I'm going to lose their attention, basically. So I was trying to think of learning as a stack of acceleration, that it enables you to process information faster or gather information or whatever. But again, not the total amount of information, but the new amount you could if you were to learn something. So I was trying to think, how can I make kids and adults feel like they are in the Shinkansen accelerating or on the rollerblade accelerating, but with their mind, that you can have this little kick of pleasure, that you're not just learning yet another factoid, but you get like a significant boost, and that's going to be empowering or give you some agency. So yeah, this is still a bit confused in my mind, as you can hear, but I believe somehow the core idea there might be something there to dig into.
It's a very important concept, and a big one, obviously, from pedagogy. How to have people feel progress. Very often the knee-jerk immediate answer is gamification. And I play my game usually on weekends, Battlefield, and I do feel that, if I just work a little bit more with this rifle, then I'm going to get this special attachment. Yes, it does actually help a little bit with the enjoyment, but that is never a reason why I sit down to have a game. It is because I can do certain things and experience certain things. So the notion of acceleration to get to another speed is both poetic and interesting. Maybe we can find out more from pedagogy, even though when I looked, I didn't find much along those lines. The reason I developed things like Liquid was to help people get more in the flow, so they don't keep losing the acceleration. And of course, the notion of flow, the psychological notion, is not necessarily where you always want to be, because it's hard to do critical thinking when you're in flow, because you're literally flowing. You don't. So when to accelerate, when to stop is good. I do remember, though, I was at the IBM Almaden labs many years ago when a friend there was a manager, and he was in the middle of doing evaluations, and he said it's so difficult but so important that everybody who works with research, they need to feel they have progressed. They need to get a bit more salary, a bit more this and that. So it's a deeply human and deeply important issue. So how does that relate to text?
Well, if it's pure text, you already know my position about books and all this, then arguable. If it's, let's say, immersive computational notebook, then it relates on how to get that kick, how to get that feeling of before the moment and now, there was something that was unlocked or something that gives me more power or agency. And a very simple, it's a basic example, but what was it? Yesterday or this morning, I forgot. I set up, I won't go into detail, but basically you can think of it as VPNs for social VR. And the way I did it, so that it's properly private, I did it, let's say, manually. I do the process, the little functions one after the other. Doesn't work, I fix it, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of it, there is my history of command. And then I clean it up, do it again, doesn't work, fix it. And then at the end, I have one big list of things. I give it a name, and then I can store it with just that name. So I basically, as if it was the title of a book, let's say, but unlike a book, here you can execute it. It's code, it runs, it does something. And I think, to me, that's a big, big difference, or that's the kind of text that is special because you can do something about it. Why do I mention this now? Is because instead of having the description of something I have learned, I now have a tool that does something, like starting a VPN server for VR. It doesn't really matter what it does, but it does it. And why do I mention it is because now I have this little building block that is also a little bit documented, but that does something. And that does give me the little kick, the little acceleration, like, oh, I have this new item in my toolbox and I can use it for this. But maybe if I change it a little bit, I can use it for a seemingly unrelated, initially irrelevant topic. So yeah, to me, that's the kind of thing that, because it's empowering, again, it improves my agency. I can do more thanks to that text, but that text is also computational. It's not just text. So that's the kind of thing, I guess, that if I and others can have more and more of those little tools or process actually that leads to this kind of tools, yeah, I think we can do more, basically.
You know, one thing nerds do when they visit each other is generally look at other people's bookshelves. And there's an assumption that at least some of the books have been read. But maybe for students, they can have badges, virtual badges maybe. You know, if you've read certain things or gone through certain things, maybe they can have their concepts mapped in a more global sense so that they can point to where it fits. I mean, the whole point of citations is supposed to be that, but it is quite messy. But imagine a student learns about a certain thing and manages to elucidate it, to put it in a certain environment where other people can see how well connected it is. You know, basically building. By the way, Emily just texted, they're in an Uber, so I'm very embarrassed. Yeah, I think that's a very important issue. I mean, one of the criticisms from the examiners for my PhD was it's not scientific enough, which makes me frustrated and angry. But what I'm trying to do is talk about friction while reading. Now, the visual meta reduces friction of following citations, making citations, and all of that stuff. And then when I was working on that, I also got to the, hang on, I'll try to find it because it's close to what you were talking about.
Oh, and I just dropped a link to an Outlier Ventures event in the meeting chat, and it was basically a US West Coast incubator that's just cranked out a whole bunch of companies working in the Web3 and metaverse space. So some of the presentations might have some ideas that might be of interest, or there might be some people there that we might want to invite to some of our events. So you can watch that at your leisure.
Yeah, I'll have a look at that. Thank you. Yeah, so the two, I'll click on that now, but the two sections I've been working on to deal with that point is situational awareness and context awareness. And actually, it's worth sharing something specific because situational awareness is speed-based. I'm going to paste in 3 points. So this is how the military looks at it. There's 3 levels. And the deepest one, or the highest one, whatever you want to call it, projection, I think relates to what you're saying, because education shouldn't just be a linear step up. There should be some searching for where the next step is, right?
Yeah.
So taking text from fighter combat into a notion of acceleration was kind of cute.
I'm wondering then if there was, I don't know if you have tried on Khan Academy, but in other places, at least in Khan Academy, at some point they had a graph when you learn mathematics where you go from, I think they do it also for Duolingo. You have the different concept, let's say, but you can imagine, let's say, Spanish level 1, level 2, level 3. But then, for example, if you want to learn about, I don't know, the family, then you need at least a couple of adjective or something. It doesn't really matter, but in the end, you had a graph or a tree actually, because you started with a single point at the beginning, and then yeah, maybe visualizing that graph, the different concepts you already have for acquired, and then that either you go through it faster, or that once you have unlocked part of that graph, then you will, yeah, I don't really know how to visualize, or if it would help with, yeah, how to evoke that feeling, not just know about it or discuss about it in the abstract, but
Well, one thing we've talked about a lot is some kind of graph view, and we've talked about it in VR a lot as well. And this may be a very good case study for students to contribute to a graph view in a way where their peers can see how they're doing. I mean, Edgar goes to a private school. It's quite expensive. It's a bit ridiculous to have to pay for a school. I think that should be society's job. But anyway, it's a school that doesn't have any bullying. That's what the government report said last year. None whatsoever is what everybody's reported. So it's not one of those, you got to be tough, like an American high school movie from the 80s, where there's the jock and all these people. In Edgar's school, they are all genuinely supportive of each other. So maybe it's a bit of a nerdy school, but the thing is, what you're talking about here would fit in such a school environment. If you have a school where people are just trying to be cool, this wouldn't be cool. No one would do it. But if it's encultured, as in, you know, here's a way to show off your achievements, and it's not just a varsity letter because you're doing a sports thing, it's also academically, that could maybe be of real value. Again, accelerating into it.
I like it. I like the badge idea for the students.
Yeah, Edgar gets some badges, but we don't know what they are. But if it was in a context like this, I think that could be more powerful.
I don't like badges. I mean, I understand the symbol of it, but I think it's like an extrinsic motivation. It's like somebody else told you that it matters, so it should matter to you. And I think, let's say, if you use a tool, being either intellectual, like a process, or let's say a piece of software, let's say summarizing through OpenAI, you don't need somebody to give you a badge. Like you can tell, you can do something that was impossible for you until then. And that is in itself the reward. So I think that's the moment where you feel some kind of acceleration because you have some new power, and that pleasure comes from the potential where initially you're like, oh, it worked there. What if I could use it here, there? So again, I get the badge, I get the point of the badges, but I think as quickly as possible, they should disappear, or the learner should see that the reward is in itself the knowledge that enable them to do more. I can give a very simple example, a basic example. When I started to do the VPN for VR, for private interactions in VR, In the first couple of steps, there is some firewall called IP tables. And it was, I just didn't get it. It was not working. I didn't get it. And I tried and I failed couples of times. And it was hard for me to admit to myself, like, well, maybe it's actually not possible for this project, but at least I would have learned a little bit about this famous tool or its principle. So maybe I need to not only let go of this entire project, but remember that big picture is I'm learning something. Might not work right away, but maybe in 1 month, 6 months, 10 years might become useful. So it's not such a big deal. So yeah, I think at some point it's this kind of a balance between the process of learning and adding like a little tool to your toolbox is that valuable. And yeah, well, ideally it's useful right here, right now, but it might not be, and that's okay.
I mean, you are very intrinsically motivated. I mean, just look at your job. But I do agree. Personally, I also wouldn't want to have badges, but thinking about it in a school situation, that is very different, especially with younger kids, getting a reward from this, that, and the other. But of course, the best is when they get to a point where they do it because they feel they can then intellectually do more stuff. Edgar was learning yesterday about the overview effects, seeing the Earth from space in one of his books. So he didn't quite get it. So I explained, because he plays chess. So chess, imagine if your head is really low and you just see a few pieces, and then you take your head up and you look down, you have an overview. Just learning. Oh, here he is. Hey, Edgar. Come and say hi. Come and say hi. Come and say hi. What are you looking at?
Hi, Edgar.
Sportsman is here, a bit moist.
Hello.
Hi.
What are you doing?
This.
Okay. Edgar, do you have any badges on your blazer you want to show us?
This.
Let's see what he has to show us.
There is. Again, I'll come back.
Oh, it's a bit wet. Yeah, these are from the school group you're in, right?
The golden one on the top is to show my house, and the second one is the coupon.
What is coupons for this?
If you're very good, you don't only get coupons in your diary, then you get it also on your blazer.
Really? So it's a big reward because you've been good. Excuse me, you've been good.
Oh, I think in PP1 we get it for a start.
That's very good, darling.
Okay.
Wait, one more thing.
Even Luca gets it.
Can you read those 2 words for me? It's a very complicated word. I'm just wondering. Okay. Hey, take your blazer, hang it up, young man, and close the door on your way out. Sorry, that's a Hamilton quote. Oh, that is one of the big pieces of news, actually. Valentina, when she was here, she hates Hamilton because it's all about America and stuff. So boring. Everything is about America. And then I asked if she'd only seen it live. Yes. So she watched a bit here and she's completely changed her mind. So, yeah, you should all come and watch Hamilton. Right. Yeah, getting acceleration is much more interesting than flow, isn't it? It's certainly more poetic.
I think it's flow. I think in the moment it's great because let's say your worries disappear. You're just in the moment. But I don't feel like it's empowering. Like you can be in flow for something completely pointless. Like I'm not saying doing the dishes is pointless. It's definitely useful, but it's not going to have like an impact for. I mean, if you never do it, it will. But if you do it meticulously every time, and you really focus on it, that's going to work. But the impact on your life is not going to be there. Whereas the way I see some kind of like acceleration, intellectual acceleration, like you unlock something that might unlock a lot more. Yeah, it could and should have big impact. It should be like a compound effect, composable. It's I think, yeah, flow in the moment is nice, but I don't see it having potentially at least long impact, long lasting impact.
Did you say Tucker Carlson just left Fox? That's going to have a huge impact on information dissemination. I have to, for the sake of devil's advocate, I have to take issue with washing dishes. Because even though I'm not a Buddhist, and it's the one philosophy I'm not comfortable with, you know, to try to be in the moment and to enjoy doing those everyday tasks is really important. Now, having said that, actually, let's go a little bit more devil's advocate. So what's the point of these intellectual endeavors?
The point of so to me, the point of learning is that it increases my chance of survival. Like I'm going to learn stuff, and then I can do more, and that in itself is I get pleasure out of this because I get a sense of power, a sense of being able to expand the list of things I can build and just do. So I feel that the chance of me getting bored also are lower. So that's why, yeah, that's the excitement of learning something new.
Yeah, that's cool. So what about you, Peter?
What about me? About what?
About, well, Fabian was talking about the importance and value of intellectually challenging yourself and learning new things. And because I'm having fun pretending to be a devil's advocate on the being in the moment washing dishes thing, I asked what is the point of learning and moving ahead?
Well, I'm always trying to expand my capabilities. Sometimes I have gotten where being in the flow has been a bad thing. For instance, getting in the flow of digesting documentation for something that turns out not to have been implemented the same way the documentation claims it was. I've killed huge amounts of time going down the rabbit hole of trying to figure out how to get something to work that turns out was utterly impossible from the get-go. And had I not been in the flow, I would have realized to check myself and abandon it sooner. And instead, I'll be so determined to make it work that I'll wind up investing far too much effort in, again, what I should have cut my losses on. So that's the problem with flow. Flow keeps me from realizing when it's time to cut my losses and jump out of a local optimum that I'm stuck in.
So I have another provocation of that, and that is I am extremely lucky with the friends that I have, and I primarily mean you guys. It is, I've been very lucky by first, you know, way back when, Syracuse, 90s, getting in touch with Doug Engelbart, and of course, getting to know him really well was in itself incredible. But because of him, I met other people, primarily Vint Cerf, who's been an incredible networker for me. So I have access to an incredible range of people's different mentalities, and I'll keep using the word incredible until I use it up. So, okay, there's the thing of what benefits oneself and what benefits others, and the opposite is, I don't know if I mentioned last week, but today is actually the anniversary of one of my oldest and closest friends' death. That was a year ago. So today is not fun, but I feel that when dealing with grief, as we all have to, You know, there's a difference between what we have lost in a friend or family member compared to what they have lost, which is everything. And the reason I mentioned that is, you know, I love having coffee with brilliant people or going to the Groucho in the middle of the night and talking about all kinds of things. It's incredible. But I really feel that just because I've been blessed with you, and I should really both enjoy that and use that, not waste that opportunity, I also have a debt to pay to everyone else. And that's why I think the record is so important. So I really feel that when something in our community, like what you just talked about now, Fabian, you know, if I'd gone to pick up Emily and Edgar and they didn't take an Uber, the whole acceleration thing wouldn't have come up today. That is a really provocative thing. You know, Alan is someone else who comes up with weird, provocative things often. Right, great. And Fabian, you also have a tremendous community. I mean, I just look at your tweets where you are, but it's really indulgent for us to talk, and it's indulgent in a good sense. You know, we need to do that. But how the heck can we now take the idea of mental acceleration as a great example, not into the world necessarily now also, but how can we make it accessible in the future? You know, we are drowning in information.
Yeah.
Right. And
I mean, it's making it actionable somehow. That's honestly that's the worry also of starting to discuss about this kind of things that are maybe useful, personal, not to say intimate, is that just evoking them, it's going to prompt more work. Like if it's genuinely interesting, then we must write about it. We must program something that leverages it. We must present it. We must distill it. Get feedback from others. Somebody that might be studying pedagogy and say, "Yeah, okay, guys, we discussed about this 50 years ago. It's called blah blah blah, and whatever you said was irrelevant because of X, Y, Z." So yeah, that's it's yeah, it's the work. No trick around it.
so I'm probably not going to properly transcribe this conversation because it's a normal Monday. But I would like to have your previous bit in a format that I can cite and link to and connect and address. You know, I think it's so important to be able to take these things like Peter. Very often, to my ears, he talks absolute esoteric nonsense because he's so different. And then it takes me quite a long time to realize what it was. And then it changes how I think. A lot of things he's done with visual meta is one example, but point is, there in the moment, it isn't as valuable as it will be in the future. And then we get back to the notion of how to get at it again.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, one of the things we have to do is some kind of a massive VR room with incredible AI-powered views and that stuff. Of course, that's the easiest thing to say and hardest thing to build. What do you guys remember from last week that was worthwhile? Are any specific thoughts that came up?
That's a little bit like during the symposium in London. It takes a bit of it's very challenging to have very different viewpoints from, let's say, technique to art to other viewpoint. It's challenging to translate basically from one domain of knowledge to another, and then check, are we actually talking about the same thing? So that I felt a little bit like this last week.
I think it's a little bit like Frode's experience of my comments. It just needs to be percolating in the subconscious for a while until it gets sorted and plugged in and interconnected with what's already in there.
Yeah, context. I'm just in the background here, I'm just going through our document and making sure all the names, the headings, and links for our future benefit. I mean, one thing that would be good is to experiment with, guess what, visual meta in different environments. You know, I think, especially in what you're building, Fabien, to be able to somehow be reading this and then take it into what you're working on as a snippet, not necessarily as a big, boring PDF. Just don't forget that modern PDF, you can actually select a paragraph of text and it's clean. You know, and then have it include the metadata. Because, you know, the different views will have very different benefits. So tell me more about how we should store our, no, let's not, talk more please about how we should access our record. There's gotta be some thoughts.
To me, it's a little bit also, I wanted to touch on it last week, but I didn't really have the chance to do that. When you were asking about the difference between reading with AI versus writing in AI, to me, a lot of the, and I forgot, there is like a technical word, at least in French, like a écrit lecture, I think, which is a mix of writing and reading that a lot of in academic research you do is like you don't take a PDF of a research paper and read it and that's it. No, you annotate it, you challenge it, you find a way to. Yeah, it's not something you just consume. You really basically rewrite it in another way. And same, in order to write something, you read a ridiculous amount, you organize it. So it's really very remote from the idea of reading a book or writing from A to Z without like countless iterations. And I think, yeah, for example, that either the PDF or the transcript you share or the YouTube video, to me, it's how to judge, let's say, how we're going to not just consume it, but be able to use it as a building block. That's how I would judge, let's say, the quality of it. So, for example, here, if there is AI or not, but let's say visualization of the 2 hours video, and this was like this part, that part related to that topic, and then we can select a section of it to build on it. That's how we judge, let's say, a quality output of it or a way to build on it. So that might mean, again, I'm a little bit techno-solutionist on this, but yeah, how if the source there is the video, how can we, or our memory of the video, how can we play with it? Does it become like another web page with a snippet with the timestamps, with or without a transcript? Does it become something else? I don't know. I did not think too hard about it, to be honest.
I think that is the point. You know, even if you look at it from a hardcore academic perspective, what is the point of producing knowledge in a recorded format? It is for reuse through thought and citation and all of that stuff. So I think that is a very, very powerful and good measuring stick. What do you think, Peter?
I agree. And a lot of it, I'm not necessarily going back to the written record so much as just the interaction of the actual live chats when we're having them. So if I get into a long form writing project, that's when I'd be going back and referring to the earlier transcripts. But as far as day-to-day progress on the R&D side, it's just the interactions as they're occurring.
Yeah, and one of the provocations I presented last Thursday was brought up you right now. What should a natural length of a document be? Right, it's not a jokey thing, because I think one of the issues we have in this community is because we use the word academia, some people think that if you write something, it has to be a certain length and a certain polish and a certain this, that, and the other. I don't think we should have that in our community. I think we should write in whatever form suits the specific people. And I think, Fabienne, this is something that you've gone through. I think in the beginning, you were one of the people thinking, oh, God. And then it came down to, yeah, okay, I'll just do it my way. To an extent, I don't know.
Yeah, but it's something, it's not just to overcome, it's like you want to do a faux pas, you just join a community, you know, just like, this is my way or the highway, you want to check a little bit if or how to do it rather. So
yeah, because you're talking about, you know, writing for reuse. You know, I have my Quest Pro headset here that I used one single time in Japan, and I just charging it now. I'd like to use it more, but as this Wired article, let me just send it. One of the things they're talking about here is the problem of interoperability, which of course is intimately related to the notion of reuse. You know, that's an important thing. I would love to be able to put on a headset, work on some of this stuff, and then have it continue. And there are many ways to do that, of course. Isn't there?
Oh, just dropping the link to the cybernetics group in the chat. And also another thing about formats. I find that the conference paper format tends to be too short. I think the natural format would be something less than a monograph, but more than a conference paper submission. And the other thing I find useful, again, I keep coming back to the whole literate programming mode of writing, is looking at some of those false starts and taking an iterative approach to the writing. Best example of a book that did that was, let me find the link to it. 1 second. Pasting it into the chat now. Let Over Lambda. I don't know if you ever heard of it, but it's a book about macro systems for programming languages. But one of the nice things that it does is that it will have several iterations of a macro that it's building up, and even has its own little notation system. So instead of just presenting a final thing, you get, here's our first take at it, here's another take at it, and all of the versions are part of the book, so that you can actually follow the evolution of it over time. And you don't see that very much in formal writing, and I think it would really help, especially for students. A student sees the final result, and it's very intimidating to them. But if instead you can walk them through the process and show them how you'd go through a couple iterations, then the students can learn the process. And you don't get that if all you're doing is sort of doing a post-justification of how you arrived at your result in your final thing. So naturally, you're doing the final conference paper, you're pressed for format, so you ignore how you actually got to what you had and present the final thing. You might even sort of have a retroactive continuity approach to try to explain how you do it that implies that there was a straight line course from where you started to where you wound up at with no deviations along the way. And it was just this perfect logical stream of consciousness that sprung from your skull like Athena being born into the world. And that's not what the real underlying process looks like. So again, if we could capture a more psychologically realistic representation of how we're arriving at the result of our writing as we're writing it, I think it could be more useful in the long run.
I can see for specific educational context, but as a lawyer, I'm surprised to hear you say that. We just had a situation here in the UK where a politician last week, a black woman, mentioned something about racism being about race. And many people got up in arms and saying, what about Jews? What about Irish travelers? And she then had to say, oh, it was just an early draft. I wasn't finished. But, apart from the absurdity of the discussion being around the word race and racism, I thought it was, there are many horrible prejudices, no question. But anyway, the point of the story is, when do you want to open yourself up to being quoted for saying, yeah, but earlier, look at this. Earlier, you thought so-and-so.
Ah,
Right.
software development is a much safer space to be working in.
Yes.
Anything touching on politics, I want to keep as far away from my academics as possible.
Indeed. I see a yellow hand.
Even if it's just the three of us, I still put the yellow hand. Okay, I'm going to try to make it pragmatic so that in order to answer that last question, I'm going to give myself a little job, which is and to go on with Peter's remark about the making the process tangible and visual. And I think it is indeed, if you just see the final product, honestly, pretty much anything is overwhelming. I was thinking about it, it's an anecdote, but this weekend I was at the commission for a virtual panel on virtual reality for citizens in Europe. And I felt bad because I was kind of criticizing everybody, like, oh, you use Google, Meta, etc. You are an idiot who don't care about privacy. I did not say this, and I did not mean it, but in some moment I can imagine that some people saw it that way. What I wanted to share, again, when I was doing my rollerblade, I think a lot because I'm just listening to music, so I don't have anything else but to think about the meaning of life and my past mistakes. And I wish I had a video of me doing the rollerblade, because now I'm not too terrible, but I really sucked at it like everybody else at the beginning. All this to say that when people see me with a VR headset, VPN, whatnot, I imagine that for a lot of people, it seems like infeasible. Whereas it was infeasible for me at the beginning, and a lot of it still is. So it's very challenging, and it's a lot of failures along the way. And that's the failures that you see if you expose the process. All that to say that, to go back to the question of, okay, what can we do with the video and the text and how to put all this? I will try then to put this very video here as a starting point, and to say the idea, the kind of abstract concept, illy defined about intellectual acceleration, the link with agency and all this. What could it, should it become a piece of paper, an article for the book or another presentation or a piece of code? I will use this video as a starting point, and then see, do I use the actual video? Do I use the transcript? Do I use something else? And then unfold from there. And expose the process while doing so, and hopefully me also learning while doing so.
That sounds good. It should, all of this should, of course, be about the process, but the question is, how, what do we want the process to come out?
And of course, even with the general research process itself, lots of times you're starting with current sources and then working your way back to figure out what were the most important sources in the literature until you finally get back to the original core pieces. But then when you're writing it up, you go and you present the linear, originally so-and-so said this, then it was built in by so-and-so, who was then modified by the other person. So your actual research process is almost in reverse of the order in which you present things with the final chronological representation in the final paper. And again, for a student who's like looking at that, trying to learn how to do what we do, they're just going to be intimidated because how did he ever know to start there? And that's going to be the thought in their head. Wow, that's some arbitrary genius out there who came up with this. But if you were asking yourself the same question. That is something that happens in the programming area all the time. I'll try to explain to a student, you are not intrinsically any dumber than the person who came up with these famous ideas. If you were alive at the time that Vannevar Bush came up with what he was writing, there's just as good a chance that you, if you were exposed to the same thing he was exposed to, could have come up with the same or a similar formulation on your own. The other people in the past who are famous are not these super geniuses who have some genetic difference from us that puts them on a whole nother tier of humanity. It's a question of what you were exposed to at the time and being in the right place at the right time. And that means that there are things that are happening now that are going to be available to you that someone in 20 years would look back and say, oh, wow, how were you able to do that? What a genius you are that you were able to come up with these solutions. And the more things that you expose yourself to, the more tools you have to be able to see those connections and be able to seize on the opportunities when they arise.
From a teacher perspective, I like what you're saying, but I don't at all agree in general, because if you look at someone like Doug Engelbart, he saw stuff, he said stuff, and people who have access to exactly the same stuff can't see it, even today. You know, a lot of what we're talking about here is obvious from a bigger perspective, but yeah, you know.
Oh, that's a real good counterpoint, Frode. Very good counterpoint.
Unfortunately.
And I guess maybe there are some sorts of things that are more obvious and more non-obvious than others. And Doug certainly came up with a lot of non-obvious insights at the time.
Yeah, but, you know, I remember him saying that, you know, when he gets these big awards, people come up and congratulate him and saying, oh, you know, it's so amazing what you saw, but why couldn't other people see it at the time? And he wants to say to them, you're not seeing it now. You know, so yeah, it's a tough one. Anyway, as a provocation, as a positive, I am fully behind what you're saying. This is what we should be teaching the kids. As a actuality thing, it's a bit rougher.
Oh, and another really great book, I don't know if you ever read it, but Discovering by Robert Scott Root Bernstein. And that's just an absolutely remarkable text. And it's how to make scientific discoveries. And it takes the form of a fictional dialogue of four friends, each with different perspectives, who are meeting as a dinner club every other week, sort of like we do, throwing some questions out with each person coming back with their own perspective. And it's really an amazing book and has best science quotes and appendix at the back that are just absolutely wonderful. So if you haven't read that, you really owe it to yourselves to dig it up.
You mean like the Lunatics? That was a society of learned people, 17 or 1800s. They met in the evening, so they were known as the kind of lunar society. But they were a bit controversial, so that's where we get the term lunatic. But yes, if only we could be that controversial, right? Well, one thing, you know, I talk about PDFs, yeah. They not being able to change stuff with the presentation is really annoying. Like what we're doing here, it would be really nice to have the type flow a bit more. So don't think that I think PDF is like perfection. It absolutely isn't.
Okay, I just dropped the book link into the chat for you.
Thank you.
Anyhow, I should be heading out. Mom needs me for a little help with a couple things.
Fair enough. So Fabienne, I know you're not a Mac user, but do you have access to a Mac at work or at home? So if there's something specifically on a Mac, can you view it?
No.
Okay. That was a rough answer. But fair enough. Hey, I don't have access to a Unix machine or Linux machine, so I can't say anything much back. Okay, I'm going to send you a new version of this document now with all the sections should be citable. There's obviously a lot of work for me to do this, but as you know, it's a prototype, so it's okay. But if we have a production workflow, I'm sure it'll be much smoother.
To be, I shouldn't do this as we're finishing, but the thing is, I try to put efforts roughly proportional to how much I'm going to, I don't know how to put it, not be in a black box after. So of course I can get a Mac, of course I can blah, blah, blah. And that would be helpful and that would help you. And hopefully I would learn also something in the process. But I know it's a trap. So I don't want to put a lot of effort into this. So it's a little bit longer response, but still to say no, sorry.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair point. By the way, I kind of had a script at one point that I just want to show, which would be really useful. Imagine if an author or similar, what I can do is here, this is the link to the video. Put that into memory or something, and then select the chat. And then automatically all the numbers become links to that time into the video. Wouldn't that be cool?
Oh, I love that idea.
That's very scriptable, isn't it?
But that's what I did a couple of a while ago.
Yeah, thank you. That's where we saw it. We had it on our website, didn't we, or something?
Yes, yeah. There was something like to adjust the offset, and that also made a link to the video based on its URL.
Because what we do have for everything is chat log with a date. If there is a title, because a special session, we have that. And then we have link to a video. And on the video, there's a link to the chat log. If there is a transcript, that's also there. But for this one, it's just this.
Okay, I'm going to have to bow out now. See you next time.
Yeah, see you later, Peter.
Take
Bye-bye.
care.
Bye.